I think entrepreneurship for me has changed as well over the years. I do think entrepreneurship is a really big mirror to ourselves, our inner world. And I think for me, I came up against my own mirror pretty quickly, in the sense that I was very much driven by a sense of external validation, and really I was very much putting up a certain front as the accomplished young entrepreneur that always has an answer to everything, that is everything is possible, and to an extent that's great, but for me it started working against me eventually when you move so far like away from your true self, that in a sense it just becomes very draining. It becomes very exhausting. Burnout, it's been so much talked about, and I think in many ways it's still talked about within the realm of working too much. I believe it's much more of an inner process in which, for me, burnout is a signal that there's a lack of authenticity within yourself, where you're not where you maybe should be, or in the sense of where you're maybe not being 100% true to yourself and others in the process.
If you're a founder and you're still struggling to find balance, then this interview is for you. At the top of her success, Valerie decided that life was no longer representing who she really was. She then quit and rebuilt her new business and life from scratch. A life that truly aligns with the freedom that she always dreamt to be reaching as an entrepreneur. In this chat, we are talking about flow. We're talking about energetic performance and how she is now leading a global community of female founders that are working with their cycle and not against it. So if you're still struggling to find a real role model outside of all of this hustle culture mess, then this conversation is for you. Keep watching and let me know what you think in the comments. Hello. Welcome back to the Founders Bible. Hi, Valerie. How's it going?
Good. Yeah, I'm excited for this. Let's do it.
Wonderful. So I just told you how to break the ice here at the Founder Bible. The very first question is always, what the heck is wrong with you? Why are you a founder? What's your story?
I would say I'm a terrible employee. I'm not I think I've maybe been an employee for like 10 days in my life, and those didn't go very well. So
I thought that I was weird because I did 2 months, but then you definitely beat me.
No, I mean, let's not count like the student jobs and stuff, obviously. But when it came to entering the real world of work, then that didn't go so well. So I felt like, in a way, I had no choice. Not so much because, I wasn't performing as employee. I just really felt from the beginning I wasn't able to find anything that really, got my juices flowing as a young person, full of ambitions and energy. So it just felt really natural. I was following my curiosity quite a bit, and in the end, that's led me to entrepreneurship. I wasn't even aware of it at the time, but looking back, that's where the entrepreneurship sort of came into place. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, the reason why we connected is because you're doing amazing work with amazing female founders. I'm gonna get there at some point in the conversation. I'm very interested to learn, but before then, guide us through a little bit your journey as a founder. Especially, I love to hear the stories, of like the walls hit and smashed with your face. What have gone wrong, and what did you learn from there?
Yeah, I mean, where to start? I think it's probably gone more wrong than right, whatever that means. But yeah, it was an intense ride so far, for sure. I've changed a lot as a person, so I think entrepreneurship for me has changed as well over the years. I do think entrepreneurship is a really big mirror to ourselves, our inner world. And I think for me, I came up against my own mirror pretty quickly, in the sense that I was very much driven by a sense of external validation. So I was working extra hard, and really I was very much putting up a certain front as the accomplished, young entrepreneur that always has an answer to everything, that is everything is possible, and to an extent that's great, but for me that started working against me eventually when you move so far like away from your true self, that in a sense it just becomes very draining. It becomes very exhausting. and it takes a lot of energy to continuously play that role to the outside world, I would say. So yeah, entrepreneurship has been tough. It also has been super exciting, extremely adventurous. It's brought me all over the world. Yeah, I mean, it's been a massive learning process. I always call it a very overpriced MBA program over the years that yeah, I was excited to complete. I started off in actually more in West Africa initially, then some, and went to an entrepreneurs program in Chile, in South America, and then eventually made my way back to Europe, where I'm from. So it's been also just a great geographical journey in many ways as well. Did a lot of business in the African continent, Sri Lanka. So yeah, it's been a great ride, but definitely one that has put me to my edge in many different ways, perhaps even beyond the edge at times, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I recently started to write a lot about the changing of paradigm between the fake it till you make it and fake it till you burn out.
Yeah.
And I want to learn more about this from your side. What happened when you really went down? How did you get through it? What did you learn from it? How can other people, first of all, that are in similar situation and maybe they're not even aware of it, can learn
Yeah.
from this story?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think burnout, it's been so much talked about, and I think in many ways it's still talked about within the realm of working too much. I believe it's much more of an inner process in which, for me, burnout is a signal that there's a lack of authenticity, I think, within yourself, where you're not where you maybe should be, or in the sense of where you're maybe not being 100% true to yourself and others in the process. And that, I think that happens a lot in entrepreneurship, because there's just all the, the forces of the startup culture. I think it's very easy to get sort of lost in these, in the forces, in the sense of the hustle culture, the investment rounds, doing things, the way the books tell us to do. So very much sort of trying to live up to that image of the, the hustle entrepreneur. And for some people that works really well, and for some people that's just not who we are, which was the case in my case. So then eventually you can keep that up for quite a few years. I was amazed by how resilient our bodies, or my body, was, in the sense of keeping up the insane hours and the fake it till you make it / till you burn out mentality for many years. But then there comes a point where the body just says no more. We're done here. And I think I was probably burned out already in year like 2, but I kind of stretched it for some. Looking back, I actually don't know how I function at the level I functioned, but for 4 years pretty much was, I think I would call it autopilot, which is a bit crazy looking back, and sort of seeing the version of myself at that time, and now having been coming out of it and looking back and being like, wow, how the hell, like, was that even possible? So I think it's a burnout can be either it hits you really hard and you're out, or it's like a longer journey in which you at some point come to a point where it's just no more, and the body starts saying no, and the mind can no longer overrule it. That's what happened.
But you said that some people can make it and kind of thrive it. Do you really believe that some people can like they can succeed in a term of like long-term health point of view, not so much about the money materialistic point of view?
Honestly, I think the hustle culture is complete bullshit. I mean, let's be honest. I think it
Bam,
does.
that's it.
Yeah, it doesn't work ever. There always something has to give. Whether it's your health, or it's your personal life, or it's your business. I mean, I think it's still glorified way too much in many different ways. Even still on LinkedIn, there's a lot of celebration of the whatever 60-hour work week. And I think I don't think it ever works in the long term. You're right. I agree. I do think some people, if you just look at it from the business perspective, can thrive on that a lot longer than others can.
Okay.
Some just, love it. I don't know. I mean, in a way, I loved it too. There's an addiction part of it as well, right? It's like this, you're just like, yeah, it's like you start defining yourself in terms of the hustle as well. So it just becomes this sort of um, force or tunnel that you're sucked into. And it's kind of also kind of nice because it's all you need, all you pretty much care about is like just making sure your business works out, right? So it's like kind of very single focused in a way. But yeah, something has to give. In my case, it's for a long time it was the private life that suffered for sure. My relationship suffered, and eventually my health really suffered. So yeah, I agree. I think in the long term, we're not robots. I think it's pretty much impossible. But it hits people in different ways, right? And I think yeah, I'm just generally, I'm a quite like sensitive person in the sense I really absorb a lot of energies around me and things like that. So I think it hit me extra hard. Maybe that's not, if you're made into in different ways, perhaps you can last a bit longer. But yeah, I agree. Eventually something will break. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. How, so you said something at the beginning, it kind of connected me with, your own personal journey. A founder, I think some months ago, kind of proudly said, if you're not a religious person, entrepreneurship is actually the fastest way to spirituality, because you really need to go through so much challenges, so much mess, that you really question at some point like who you truly are. And I also notice, through working with founders, through these interviews that I keep doing already for almost 1 year, I keep seeing the same pattern, which is basically, if you like, we are 3 out of 4 founders are neurodiverse. So basically the majority of us are, that they have something that people would consider abnormal going on in our minds. So we kind of like live constantly feeling different, the black sheep in the crowd. We need to prove that they're wrong. So that's what you said at the beginning, like I was moved by externality, so I
Yeah.
proving something outside. Then it probably at some point you collapse, you need to work it through. How did you work it through? What made you completely like shift this inner drive?
Yeah, I'm just reminded of Joseph Campbell's like hero's journey. In a way, it sounds very similar to what you just described. And I think the hero in that sense comes when we come to realization that, who we truly are and whether or not that still aligns with how we show up in business or in life in general. I mean, to your question, my breaking point, it came, I mean, there was pretty early, so it was really weird. I woke up one day, I think it was like year 1. And I woke up and I just couldn't get out of bed. Like my legs just refused to move. And that was very strange. And literally took me like 20 minutes, even to my partner, who was my co-founder. I didn't even mention anything. I was just like, oh, you go ahead to the office, I'll meet you in a bit. And I was just like so ashamed to even say that, hey, my legs are not moving. I can't actually get out of bed. There was, I mean, this is just, there was a lot of shame throughout the whole process, I would say. But that's when the first signal came. Eventually I did get out of bed. I did make my way to some cafe. I was staying out the window and there was just pure guilt of not being in the office. And so that was like the first signal. That never happened again to that extent. So then I think after that happened, I just kind of put it away and just continued for quite a few years. I would say when, eventually, I think year 4, maybe I started getting like crazy headaches. Yeah, and first time I didn't know what happening, like lost feeling sensation of my arms and legs. And it was very weird. So I went to the hospital and remember this doctor who looked completely burned out himself, telling me, you're just stressed. And I could have slapped him in the butt. I was like, no, there's
Why
something
don't
different.
you take some time off and, a little bit of work-life balance here and there?
Yeah, I mean, I tried, right? I tried. Yeah, anyway, so I got there and and then he eventually said, yeah, you have a migraine. I was like, migraine? What's a migraine? Why? I don't have migraines. So I think that's sort of when the physical, things started happening more and more. And there was many, evenings I would just lie on the floor trying to get rid of my headache before starting all over again the next day. And then, yeah, I guess that was just building up. And I think there was one point where, yeah, I was just getting sick a lot. And then it just kind of felt like like I said, my relationship was pretty much suffering as well. And my co-founder at the time, / partner, pretty much put me to the decision. Yeah, you either the relationship is done, or you have to leave the business. It's one of the two. And this is just can't continue. Yeah, and I think being confronted with that finality really helped to get pretty clear. And actually, pretty quickly, I surprised myself, definitely surprised him by announcing that I was going to leave the company, which none of us really expected, but that felt like the truth in the moment. So yeah, that was the sort of changing point.
I've spent the last year asking top founders for their secret sauce. And the honest answer, there isn't just one. Yet, the internet keeps selling us a one recipe fits all. At Whole Grain Wisdom, we're building the tools to help you craft your own recipe so that your mind, body, and energy are fully aligned and you can perform under pressure without burning out. Our recipe is very simple. This podcast shares raw stories from founders who really had the courage to jump off the hamster wheel and rebuild their operating system without hustle. The newsletter is where I go deeper into the science and protocols behind re-engineering flow and performance. And ultimately, we are running founders-only retreats around the world to create the space for real transformation. And to be honest, that's where really the magic happens. Whole Grain Wisdom is where science meets ancient wisdom. It's where we become quantum founders, the entrepreneurs led by inner energy and flow, and not finite willpower. If this resonates with you, then join us at wholegrainwisdom.com. Okay, now back to the show. How today, like what is the system that you now build for what you're building? Because also another thing that I want to kind of like clarify, because a lot of people ask me, okay, now after you realize who you truly are, and by the way, just to get there, it's a whole journey.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, then you lose your ambitions, then you work just less and you want to achieve less. I mean, this is like either that, right, or the other, the opposite. Like you become non-functional individual, just yeah, I don't know, whatever, and like in a bar, and I can have the image of like Southern Mediterranean situation in a village bar with people smoking cigarettes and drinking beer. It's like, okay, you know what? I don't need external validation anymore. Let me just smoke my cigarette, right?
Yeah. Well, I did move to the south of Europe, I have to admit, so that point is definitely true. Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, it's a transition, right? And I think for me, I've started calling it authentic ambition, which is just ambition that's really rooted within yourself, within your truth. And I probably would say I'm just as ambitious, but it shows up in completely different ways. So I pretty much restructured my whole life. I mean, after announcing I was leaving the companies, investors obviously weren't very happy, but we managed to find someone that, took over the company. So it's still there thriving. I think that helped for my mental state as well, where I was like, okay, let me put a bow around it. And then I actually, like after a few months of interim for the new owners, I really was like, okay, I need a actual like change, physical change as well. So that's when we decided to move to Portugal. Already had some family here. I've been coming here a lot. So kind of felt like I really wanted to, nature has always been really big for me. So I was always kind of going into nature all those years of entrepreneurship, but I wanted to be more part of nature on like a daily basis. So that was actually pretty much the main reason of moving to Portugal. Besides sort of wanting to escape the pretty like rat race mentality in the Netherlands as well. Very it's very how to say, it's very much the same. It's very hard to expand sort of beyond the standard labels within such a small country as the Netherlands. So we were like, yeah, we need to get out. So anyway, so that was a physical move. Obviously I did start working a lot less hours already. That was already was happening in like the transition period as well. It's just reducing a lot. And then I came to the point where, well, everything was wrapped up with the company. So then it was kind of like, okay, what now? You also had to, I mean, it wasn't the kind of exit where you get to chill on Bali for the rest of your life. So had to make money as well. So then I was reading the Surrender Experiment at the time. the book, I think Michael Singer, and he, yeah, I was just like, let me just try this. Let me just open myself up to whatever comes my way right now, trusting that the money will also come when I need it, how I need it, and it was just all going to work out. Um, I think it was easier for me to do that because there was no other pathway that felt like something I could do, even just in it, like physically, or even just with the life force I was having at that moment. It was like, there's nothing else I could be doing except just surrendering to whatever is going to come. Yeah, so then I started consulting a lot. Founders started reaching out. So that was really cool to see that I was really felt like I was being carried, like, by the universe. I definitely believe that when we make scary choices, we sort of get rewarded by that. So it felt, that gave me the time to restructure how I was showing up for work. Practically speaking, deep work in the mornings, no late hours anymore. And especially I was starting to, I would say, manage my work around my energy and not my time. So instead of being like, this at 2 o'clock, I need to be doing this, at 4, I need to be doing this, blah, blah, blah. Be like, no, how's my energy right now? And what is possible within that energy sort of wave? And I started being a lot more productive that way. A lot less hours, but a lot more results. And that ties in with the whole, female cycle syncing with your
Yeah.
business, like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just that's exactly where I wanted to go next, because first, make me understand, what does it even mean, like flowing through energy and understanding the energy levels for like a purely non experience or scientific person, and what are you building on this? Like what's your understanding of how all of this works?
Yeah. I mean, without like, I'll tie it to the female cycle in a minute, but I think for any sort of genderless, I would say, it's just like when I sit down and there's just a lot of resistance, like it feels like I have to move an entire mountain to like get this task done. Before I would have tried to move the mountain. And now I'm like, nope, it's not going to work. Let me do whatever else. Like, this is clearly ridiculous waste of energy. Let me, take a break for sometimes even as much as like 5 minutes can even help to shift things. And just sort of check in and like, oh, right, okay, I'm feeling the flow. I'm feeling there's an energy, literally like, life energy in my body. Let me work. And before it was, I would just so be driven by the results. This, whatever I was feeling, if I was falling asleep or not, I was just pushing through, and it just felt like this, like a lot of resistance and sort of this wall coming down as well. And we're just like trying to push through that. And now it's just more, depending on how I feel. And of course, that's not for everyone to do. It only works if you get to manage your own time. So that really helps. But it's also just acknowledging when something isn't working and just letting it go. And that's actually the hardest thing for, especially, many like high achievers and perfectionists. Like, let me accept that right now I'm not like bringing the results I want to be bringing. So let me just step away, and trust that I can come back later and, manage to complete whatever I'm doing in a much better way. So that's, I think, just sort of generally how I look at energy and work. What's great about the female cycle is that we move through different phases in the month, and that really affects our energy and hormone levels, obviously. So that, like, by syncing your work to the different phases in the cycle, that really helps to just get more done in better ways. And I think, for example, like ovulation week, like before, when the eggs are ovulating, that's an amazing time for women to be out there, to be pitching, selling, just speaking, whatever it is, like very outward focused. We're very much, I mean, feels like we take on the world in that week. I mean, anything is possible in ovulation week, generally speaking. But if you then compare that with, the week before your period, like, it just feels like nothing is ever working, nothing's moving. And before, that's like, I would have just, tried to push through that again. But now it's like, oh no, let me check in. Oh, actually, this makes a lot of sense. My hormones are changing right now. I'm supposed to maybe just complete what I'm working on, put little details in. It's a very great time to be very detail focused for women and not like be so outward focused. So it's about like, adjusting the schedule to how nature dictates our bodies just really, really helps in flowing through the months a lot better. It's still not easy. I mean, it's not always possible to change all these things, but to change your calendar around your cycle. But I've seen how big a difference it makes. But it's not something that's especially not very normalized in the workplace yet. Women are still not always very open about, whether on their period or not. It's not something that's easily talked about in meetings or anything. But I do think it's like, literally me and my female business partner, we check in every week. Like, hey, where are you in your cycle? Does it make sense for you to be doing this? Should I be doing this? How can we like sort of optimize and switch around so we make sure that we're not working against nature this week? Hope that makes sense.
I literally cannot wait to be like in a situation where this feels so normal to discuss and to be aware, especially. And so I spend a lot of time on whole grain wisdom, on my newsletter, on the educational part, to explain the scientific part and the ancient wisdom about it. But there still is, I feel, so much stigma on managing this way yourself, your self-awareness and so on. What have been for you the biggest challenges or walls to surpass? Because I can go back in time, or even not so much in time, like I can actually talk about last months of like feeling guilty of doing certain things. This morning I'm fortunate, I'm in Indonesia, so massage is quite cheap. I had to do something very creative and it couldn't work. And I just said, you know what? I now learned the lesson. I'm not going to push it through. I'm just going to go downstairs, 1 hour massage. After 5 minutes of massage, I got the intuition and I went going. It's like, okay, this is part of my work now. An hour doing this is part of work. 1 hour walking in nature is still part of work. So what has been the like the walls that you had to break for yourself?
I mean, like you're saying, part of that is just like the internal like pressure and the beliefs we've been fed on, like that, limit ourselves in really doing that. Sometimes I feel like, don't exaggerate, let's just get on with it, the kind of the typical sort of boomer quote and let's just get on with it. So I think it's most of that is like internal, just sort of beliefs I had to surpass. Sometimes, it's just the real world that just makes it a bit more difficult to do that. People putting stuff into your calendar, or kind of when I feel like sometimes I'm like, let me just schedule that. Let me just do the meeting anyway, or let's do this anyway. So I think it's more the internal / a bit of the external sort of structures that are in place that don't really support that kind of lifestyle. But I mean, what I find insane is like most of us become entrepreneurs also because we really like freedom is one of our biggest values, but then we impose all these rules on ourselves, which are anything but free. So I think I started, especially what helped me was like sometimes on a Monday morning, I would like purposefully not work, just to be like, okay, I get to decide, like it's Monday morning, doesn't matter. I'm, I'm like creating my own time. I'm not going to be working on Monday morning because that's the freedom that I chose for. But it was literally trying to make myself not work on Mondays to make that feel more normal. And to then just be like, okay, let me like spend this Monday morning not feeling guilty. So just kind of retraining my nervous system to it as well, and attuning it to the reality that I am allowed to set my own hours. And if I want to work, I actually love working on Sundays. If I want to do that, that's like totally up to me to be doing that. And that's, if that works for me, then that's great. So yeah, it's definitely some reconditioning and some rewiring that had to take place for sure.
Yeah, it makes me fun. It makes me laugh because there's been a time in my life where I had to set myself not working during the weekend. And I had to say, oh, good, Ale, you didn't work during the weekend. It's like, come on, how is it possible? Guide me through a little bit of your routine for like being in your zone at peak performance, whatever it is for you that you define it yourself. What are the routines? What are the things, the tools that you use for yourself that somebody else can learn from?
Yeah. I mean, let me just say, I've tried to set up like one morning routine for probably 10 years and it still hasn't worked. Then I started to realize again, like women have such different hormone fluctuations throughout the cycle. It actually makes sense that not one morning routine doesn't work for me the entire month. But at least it took me probably 10 years of trying to experiment with that. So honestly, now it's like, because I live a much slower life, like I said, I live in the mountains, you know, I have my dog, so I go walking with the dog. I just feel like some mornings there's my meditation for sure. I do a lot of somatic work. So just trying to get into my body. So shaking is a great way, just sort of shaking your body in the morning to really, you know, start to embody. Just dancing to music. Love that. Just consciously moving to, you know, songs that elevate my energy. And then it's probably either, on a good morning, it's all of that. It's meditation and dancing and moving. On a not so good morning, maybe it's just one song, you know, that I put on and I'm just really embodying to. Or sometimes it's the meditation, sometimes it's just walking my dog, and that's, you know, all that is in the morning. So I think I'm also trying to not to be so strict on myself around routines. I think this doesn't make sense to keep them so static, so I'm trying to move throughout the week depending on what my body needs in the morning as well. Sometimes it's breath work. Most of the times it's something that moves the body. Yeah, I usually tend to do like workouts and stuff, not in the mornings. Tend to do those later in the day. So yeah, just trying to just be conscious of, it's a new day, it's a new morning. How am I feeling? What do I need right now? Is that feasible in the time I have right now? Yes or no? If not, then so be it. Let me just make my favorite cup of, you know, make me make my morning chai and really be there with the chai. Maybe that's just all there is this morning. So yeah, I don't have the $1 million morning routine lined up for sure. But yeah, I've realized this is what works for me. And I do have a lot of tools in my toolbox over years of, you know, doing self-development work and attending retreats and things like that. So I'd kind of pick and choose depending on what I need in a day. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the, like, do you still feel sometimes to be getting near burning out or just near like a disbalanced place? And how did you learn to read the signs now to avoid that?
Yeah. Love that question. I think I always say I don't think you ever go back to being the same person after burnout. And I don't think we're supposed to be either. I do, like I said, I think it's much more of an, you know, gap between your inner and outer world that causes burnout. So when you start closing that gap and you start showing up more as your true self, you automatically become a different version. So right now I can never, even if I wanted to, I can never go back to being the entrepreneur I was initially, because just not possible. Like, and I would like probably burn out like, you know, day one. So it's I think it's, of course it still happens. There's moments where I see that I let go of all these things I just talked about. I just kind of like go back into just pure production mode and just jam up my calendar. Yeah, then pretty easily what happens to me, I kind of I then start feeling that I get more into my head, and so then even my vision like kind of changes, and I can tell by these signs, and I'm like, ooh, I think I'm going beyond certain physical limits right now. Let me sort of come back to earth and maybe move, you know, dance to a song. So it's really like kind of signals for me are more physical, I would say. um, I already speak very fast, as you can tell. I will already speak even faster. So then I'm like, oh, I think something's happening here too. Yeah, and I even like, I used to have a thyroid condition. I healed that through lifestyle changes, but even now, sometimes it like will kind of come back momentarily, and then I can just tell that it's just too much for my system. So then I have to scale back again. So it's a constant sort of dance, I would say, for sure. And even now I'm still like transitioning into new phases. And yeah, right now I'm in a transition to more like way more creative work. Starting to write my first novel now, so it's a completely different rhythm, completely different. I have to figure out how that's going to work and what I need to make that, you know, something that I can sustain for a while to come. Yeah.
Amazing. Let me close the chat with one last question. Do you still have fear? And if so, how do you handle it? when it comes specifically like the founder life slash, build your own lifestyle?
Actually, I have to say, I think my fear is more existential in the sense of, I think my biggest fear is that in the end, none of it what I tried to do actually mattered. Like, I, none of it actually mattered, and that's probably actually, in a sense, that's actually probably what it is going to be. Like, none of it actually really matters. But I think that's my biggest fear, that all of it is just going to be insignificant, and I'll just be, leaving this earth with no trace in the sense of all that, all that passion, all that ambition over the years. So I think it's more of, I'm constantly straddling like massive ambitions with living a life that really works for me and where I feel myself and that just flows. I have to say, I've really created my life very much on my own terms by now, so I'm very grateful for that every day. I have an incredible amount of freedom, and just freedom in time and mental freedom as well. So I think that took a while to get there. So I don't have so much fears around my lifestyle anymore. It's just more around, how do I make sure that I spend time on the things that matter, and maybe they won't even matter at all in the end. It's more about like choosing my energy wisely, in people, in places, in projects, in work. um yeah and I'm not sort of preparing for motherhood as well. I think that's maybe a bit of a fear, that how that is going to impact my working rhythm. But yeah, we'll see, we'll figure it out as the time comes.
Yeah, definitely the monthly cycle is going to change. In that case, you need to reassess the energy levels.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. I guess I can only say one thing. If there's at least one person listening to this conversation and, like kind of like clicking something inside of them, that's already good enough.
Thank you. I hope so.
Thanks so much, Valerie.
Thank you, Alessandro. Beautiful questions. Thanks for doing what you're doing.